So have you ever been on a road trip? Ever been on a road trip? Ever been somewhere that maybe you've never visited before? Like maybe another city in our state that you've kind of never passed through? Maybe another state somewhere in our country that you've never driven through? Maybe a country on the far side of the earth that you just had on your bucket list. And did you ever find yourself in the experience when you were in that place that something began to happen? Like you'd been there for a day or two and you're kind of sitting there on the porch at the cabin, or you're sitting in your tent at Camp Comfort. That's with a K, Camp Comfort. Or maybe you're driving through some quaint little village in the afternoon. Or maybe you have found a fantastic bacon chili cheeseburger at a local diner. And you're just in that moment, and you say to yourself, what? I could live here. Oh, yeah, man, I really could. I could live here. I could just stay here for the rest of my life. TikTok has a whole channel dedicated to the I could live here theme. And why do we think that? Why do we say those things, even if it's just in our mind? Well, here's why. Because when we're in that place, we begin to think, you know what? There's more scenery and wildlife fun here. Oh yeah, man, it's so much quieter here. This seems like such a safe place, or it's so exciting, man. There's so much going on. Or you know what? This looks like the kind of place that would have a great bacon chili cheeseburger. We're just there, and we're just in the moment. And we're like, oh, because what we're thinking is, if I could just live here, I'm confident I would be content. If I could just live here, I'm confident I would be content. And maybe you would be. It's possible. There's some nice places out there. But what if there was a way to be confident and content no matter what place you were in? No matter what place you're in, no matter what position you find yourself in, no matter what kind of people are around you. A way to be confident and content no matter what. Well, there is such a confidence to be found, and we're going to journey on that together this summer. We start a new series today called Pleasant Places, and we're going to be looking in Psalm 16. It is a psalm, a prayer that was written by King David, and it is in King David's prayer, in his psalm, that we will find a whole lot of places where we can be confident and content, especially in times of trouble, especially when our world seems a little shaken up. Our message today is called Safe Place, and we're going to be looking in Psalm 16, verse 1, and it begins this way. King David writes, "Protect me, God. Protect me, God." Now, I would venture to say that every single human being who has ever lived on the earth has said or thought that. Protect me. Watch over me. Keep me safe, God. Now, why would I venture to say that every single human being who's ever lived has at least thought that? Well, do we have any sixth graders in the room? Anybody sixth grader? Raise your hand if you're a sixth grader. All right, a few sixth graders there, okay. Well, on January 19th, 1936, a sixth grader named Phyllis was in her Bible class at her church in New York. It was the Riverside Church. And in her sixth grade class, they began to talk about science and religion. And the discussion was, well, can you believe in science and can you also believe in religion? Well, their class decided that they would write some letters to some scientists and some important people and ask them, hey, what's this all about? And so Phyllis decided to write Dr. Albert Einstein. And this is the last part of what she wrote in her letter. "We will feel greatly honored if you will answer our question." And here's the question. "Do scientists pray, and what do they pray for? We are in the 6th grade, Miss Ellis's class. Respectfully yours, Phyllis. Now, Einstein responded 5 days later. He got this letter and he immediately responded. And he began his letter by saying, look, I don't think that a scientist can believe that anything can be changed, and his wording is, by a supernaturally manifested wish. In other words, he was saying, I don't really know all about prayer. But then, in his letter, on January 24th, 1936, he continued, and this is what he said. However, we must concede that our actual knowledge of these forces is imperfect, so that in the end, the belief in the existence of a final, ultimate spirit rests on a kind of faith. Such belief remains widespread even with the current achievements in science. In other words, I think what he's saying was, hey, we're so smart, I don't know why people still believe in religion. But he continues, but also, everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that some spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, one that is vastly superior to that of man. In this way, the pursuit of science leads to a religious feeling of a special sort, which is surely quite different from the religiosity of someone more naive. Now, that's what he wrote to us, 6th grader, all right? You with me? Yeah. And I point that out just to say this. I think we have begun to believe that 6th graders and children can't handle the big stuff, and they can. And we can give them all the big stuff. They can handle it a lot more than we give them credit for. And what we see in these brief little pen pal letters here is that regardless of what you believe about religion or politics or science or finance or anything else in the world, every human being has been created with an innate understanding that there is something superior. You can deny it, you can reject it, you can ignore it, you can be angry about it, you can be apathetic about it, but every single human being, past, present, and future, is created with a knowledge, an understanding that there is something vastly superior, some spirit that is vastly superior to any created person, place, or thing. And we as a church graciously and boldly declare, along with Noah and Moses and Miriam and David and Ruth and Mary and Peter and Paul and Jesus and billions of other people over the last 6,000 years, that vastly superior spirit is the one true sovereign God who was and is to come. There is no one like him. And it is to that one true sovereign God that the King David, prays. And in his prayer, he says, protect me, God. Protect me. Watch over me. Keep me. The most church-going Baptist, the kindest Buddhist, the angriest atheist, all have thought or said something along those lines. Waiting for the test results from the doctor, hiding in a bathroom during a tornado, riding in an ambulance on the way to the hospital, walking home late at night on a scary street. We've all thought it. Keep me safe. We may not have even known what we were thinking, but we thought it. And sometimes we even said it out loud. Especially on this scary street, right? Just start talking out loud. I think somebody's with you, right? Conor Cruise O'Brien was an Irish author, newspaper editor, academic, and politician. For years, he was known as the only avowed agnostic to ever sit in the Irish Parliament. Agnostic meaning without knowledge, meaning that an agnostic would say, well, there may be a God or there may not be a God, but there's no way for us to know. Now, some believed O'Brien to be more atheist than agnostic. Atheist meaning that not only to not believe in the one true God, but to not believe in any deities, to just say there's nothing there. I was reading a story recently about O'Brien, and his wife was in the hospital, and she was scheduled to have a big operation the next day. And he said goodbye to her, and he walked out to his car, and as he walked out to his car, he found himself praying. You know, the things that he said he didn't believe in suddenly were a bit suspended. You know, the randomness of the universe seemed a little suspended at that moment, and because of this family crisis, he was praying, "Keep her safe, oh God." What am I doing? Why am I praying? And why was he doing that? He was simply acting upon what every human being already knows. That there is something vastly superior to who we are. And we know, as much as we may want to fight about it, we know that it is somewhat inevitable that we begin to speak to God. Somebody say, that's Western Christianity. It's not. There is this thing inside of us. We know that there is one true sovereign God, even if we hate him. Our hearts have been created with eternity, knowing he is true and he is real. Psalm 16 is known as a miktam of David. As a miktam, well, we don't know for sure. Some believe it could mean a word that's like an engraving, like you would etch something into something that's real important. Some believe that it might be a word that means kind of golden, like there's something of great value. Others think that it means cover, like you have a secret and you're kind of covering your mouth, so that nobody can, see what you're saying. But if we pull all of those together, we could say that David here has penned a silent prayer, maybe, of something very valuable that we need to kind of engrave on our hearts and our minds. It's a truth that really matters. And I really like the imagery here of a silent prayer, because it gives this picture that David has a little sermon that he whispers to himself. That when things get really hard, when things get really bad, when he gets really anxious, when he gets really afraid, when he gets really angry, when he gets shaken, when he reads the news or hears the news, when he's at the doctor, when he's in that moment of conflict in the family, he whispers something to himself. He's got a little silent prayer that he whispers to himself, and he begins by whispering this: "Protect me, God. Watch over me. Keep me safe." And why does he whisper that first? Why didn't he whisper something else? Well, he whispers this first because he knows from creation, and he also knew from the truth of the scripture that he had, and he also knew from his own personal experience with the holy, holy, holiness of God, that God is the only one who can truly keep him safe. From time to time, I will text things to my kids, and sometimes what I will text begins with a bumblebee emoji. Maybe you know I'm going here. And I'll text something like, "Be wise, be kind, be safe." And we know what that means, right? We know what we mean when we say, "Be wise and stay safe." We know what that means. It means, hey, wash your hands, Look both ways before you cross the street. It means don't always follow the crowd and what's going on around you. It means don't speed. It means text me if you have any trouble. It means don't wear white pants after Labor Day. It means ask them what kind of mayonnaise they use in the restaurant, okay? Only the important things, But we know the concept of what it means to stay safe. But we cannot keep our family and our friends and our kids and our jobs and our homes and our cars and everything else perfectly safe. We can't. Someone said this: you can't put enough padlocks on your door and enough bars on your window to keep a heart attack from happening. It's true. So the kind of safety that King David here is talking about is it's more than just, hey, I'm walking down a scary street, keep me safe. It's deeper and higher. It's what we might describe as an ultimate safety. What is ultimate safety? Well, we kind of find it even in David's words. See, David is writing this because he's in some kind of trouble. We don't know what kind of trouble he's in, but he's in some kind of trouble. So he's writing this psalm as an expression, as a little sermon to himself. Hey, I'm in trouble and I need to pray and ask God for help. Do you ever have any trouble in your life? Did you have any trouble this week in life? And anything happen? Anything go wrong this week? Did you not get something you thought you were going to get? Did you have an argument with mom and dad? Did you have an argument at work? You ever run low on money? Ever run low on mayonnaise? Ever get sick? See, we all understand trouble. It's different degrees and different values, but we all understand the concept of what it means to be in trouble and to face trouble. So what do you do when trouble comes? What do you do? Do you check your bank account? When trouble comes, do you check your bank account? Do you call your parents? Do you call your best friend? Sometimes we do call 911. We have things that we do when trouble comes. So trouble was coming to David, and the first thing he did was whisper to himself, protect me, God. Watch over me, God. Keep me safe, God. And the reason we would pray to God in that way, and not just randomly, is because David knew that the only one who can keep us ultimately safe in all the ultimate trouble in life is God and God alone. Because the ultimate trouble in life is not running out of mayonnaise. Because the ultimate trouble in life is not running out of money. The ultimate trouble in life is not getting sick and having to go to the hospital. Listen, the ultimate trouble in life is not even death. The ultimate trouble in life is sin. It's rebellion against God and his ways. It's this thing that sometimes is easy to understand and hard to describe, but it is the very thing that prevents us from being ultimately safe. And only God can bring ultimate safety to the penalty of sin. A few years ago, Greg Morse got an email from his pastor. And it was an email during the COVID outbreak, and his pastor was just saying to Greg and his wife and their kids, hey, you guys, stay well and, stay safe. But this is how he closed out his email. Stay safe, meaning be always ready to die in Jesus. We don't hear that every day, right? I mean, that's a little more than be safe, right? Stay safe, meaning be always ready to die in Jesus. Greg went on to say this: search the get well cards or the positive messages of this world, and you will not find anything like this pastor's plea. None of the optimistic emails from credit card companies or the well-wishings of different politicians told me this. No celebrities with their messages of being united and staying strong meant what he did. And then he goes on. Safety in today's world means what it has always meant during a time of crisis. Stay alive. Stay healthy. Protect yourself from the present distress. Wash your hands. Distance yourself. Take necessary precautions. But this is not the safety the pastor wished for my family. And it is not the safety I wish for everyone who is reading and hearing this. It's not safe enough. It's not safe enough. And then he says this: that pastor's plea to me and to my family and my plea to you is simply this: stay safe forever. Why do you do that? How can you stay safe forever? Well, David's going to help us answer that. Listen to the next part of verse 1. Protect me, God, for I take refuge in you. To take refuge in something means to trust in something or someone. So David is taking refuge in God. He's putting his trust in God. Can I just say that if there's anything that is plaguing our society and our culture today, it is a lack of trust. Granted, sometimes it is legitimate. But can I just say, a lot of the times it is not. And can I just also say, as professing Christians, sometimes we're the worst. We've decided that no one can be trusted. And we walk into every conversation like that. You can't trust the pastor. Remember what we voted on last time? Well, you can't trust that politician. Remember how he voted? Well, you can't trust that girl at the register. She doesn't even know how to make change. Our whole world is, we're not going to trust, we're not going to trust, we're not going to trust, we're not going to trust. And again, sometimes it's legitimate. But if you want to learn to trust more, quit trying to trust people. And by the way, quit trusting so much in yourself. If you're looking to gain trust and build confidence and build contentment, learn to trust God. He has proven himself over and over and over again. I have proven myself to fail over and over again, and so have you. We're not perfect people, but he's a perfect God. And he's a God who loves you more than any other person could possibly love you. David was king. The world was at his feet, but he knew better. He knew better. So his refuge, his trust was not his spouse, was not his kids, was not his job, was not his investments, was not his skills, his talents, was not his favorite team. His trust, his refuge, first and most, was God and God alone. To trust God like this, someone said long ago, is like placing the crown on him. This is King David. And King David is saying, you know what? I know ultimate safety is not going to be in me. It's not going to be in my army. It's not going to be in my kingdom. If I'm going to be ultimately safe, the only way I can be ultimately safe in this life and safe in death is to put my trust in God and God alone. David knew when trouble came, when tragedy came, when hell and death came, that the only one who could keep him truly safe was God. That's why he made God first and foremost his refuge. It's where he put his trust the most, was in God and God alone. About 260 years after David wrote that prayer, the prophet Isaiah was writing down a message from God about Jesus. And this is how that message went, Isaiah 53, verse 5. But he was pierced for our offenses. He was crushed for our wrongdoings. The punishment for our well-being was laid upon him. And by his wounds, we are healed. I've shared with y'all before about my friend Elton Jones, who lost his legs in a terrible accident on his chicken farm with some machinery. And when I arrived on the scene, there's several ambulances, there's a helicopter. It was a massive scene. And Elton, laying there on the ground, calls me over. He goes, "Hey, go get my Bible out of the glove compartment of my truck." And when I got over there, he goes, "All right, just read just read Isaiah 53 for me. Just read it." And when I got to this passage, and by his wounds we are healed, he said, "Hey, read that again." And so I just read that section again. And after I read it a second time, he goes, "Read it again." Elton's on the ground. There's paramedics all over the place. Calm as a cucumber. "Hey, Dow, read that again." You know why? Because Elton knew if he didn't make it off that farm, he was safe. He was safe. Because the wounds of sin had been healed. There is no greater healing that can happen to anyone than being healed from the penalty of sin. God so loved the world. He so loved me. He so loved you that he sent Jesus to the world. And Jesus so loved me. He so loved you that through his life and through his death, he suffered and died to completely absorb and pay for the penalty of sin. Not just my sin and your sin, but the sin of the world. And Jesus is still saying the same thing to you right now. Come to me. If you're weary, if you're tired, if you're troubled, if things in your marriage are just, wigging you out, if things with your kids are wigging you out, if you're afraid of what's happening with your health, if you're anxious about what's happening in the country and the world, come to me. And he says, and I will give you rest. And there is no greater rest than knowing that you can lay your head down at night, knowing that your sin has been paid for and that things are right between you and God. So have you come to Jesus? I mean, have you done that? Not have you prayed a sinner's prayer at camp and got baptized and maybe sat with the preacher at the front of the church. Those aren't evil things. But have you truly come to Jesus? Are you following Jesus today? Is your testimony a long ago at camp, I prayed something, or is your testimony this morning, I woke up and say, keep me safe, God? Because you know your safety is ultimately in him. Greg Moore said this: to stay safe 10,000 years from now, when we will have stood before God and given an account for our lives, calls us to flee to Christ now and to remain safe in Christ. Regardless of what trouble you may face today, regardless of what may happen to you this week, ultimate safety 10,000 years from now is truly knowing and truly following Jesus. That is the safest safe place in the universe.